Hey, what's up, guys? So I watched a video recently where this person was saying that apparently certain schools are using this gender unicorn chart, um, and they're apparently showing this to kindergartners. All right, on a wide scale, apparently, is what they're doing. So we're going to watch a few videos that I've got pulled up talking about this specific thing. All right. Um, what I'm going to say before we ever get into any of that stuff, because I have no idea what type of information we're going to get from the videos we're going to check out right now. All right. But my point of view is that charts like this, all right, I think should only be used if someone brings it up and says, I'm confused about this or that. I don't feel like, I don't see things the way that I should. I don't feel things the way that I should. You know what I'm saying? If a student would bring up those issues, then possibly a chart like this might help. But that should probably be between the student and a psychologist or something like that. Or possibly just tell the parent and say, hey, they've brought something to our attention, something you should probably talk to your child about. All right. But I don't think it should come from a teacher. Unless that teacher is, well versed in topics like this, then they could do more harm than good if they're just giving their opinions. All right. So I also watched a video from Mark Dice. All right. So what he says, if you bring up the fact that it could be due to birth defects, then you are transphobic and you're a hater. All right. I don't think that's accurate whatsoever. All right. Because I'm going to tell you guys, I talk to people in this community on a regular basis. I do that on purpose because I want to make sure my thoughts and opinions are grounded in reality. One core principle that I believe in wholeheartedly: do not lean on your own understanding. So therefore, I'm not just going to go and soak up a bunch of knowledge and then think, oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about now. But then later on down the road, when you're confronted with someone who actually has that life experience that you've only heard about through a video or through the internet or something like that, and no one's ever actually took the time and explained it, you really don't know. So here is what my opinion is. All right. A person's gender, yes, is determined based off of anatomy. All right. However, if a person has mixed features, you have to look beyond just anatomy, because at that point, it is a state of being. Your brain is wired differently depending on what sex you are. All right. So if you have mixed features, your brain is going to be wired one way, but then you're going to have physical, conflicts with that mentality. All right. That is a definite possibility. So the whole idea, I think, where a lot of this transphobic rhetoric comes from is the idea or the notion God doesn't make mistakes. So bear that in mind, and then think about people who are born with both male and female parts. All right. So bear that in mind, and then think to yourself, oh, wait a minute, how is that a thing? Right. So that person, if they want to have surgery to go in one direction or the other, isn't that going to be up to their mentality? So shouldn't they say, do you feel more like a girl or like a boy? I mean, if you have both parts, then you want to be a normal person. You don't need to have both. You know what I'm saying? So isn't that the way they should go about that, to see, like, what direction do we need to go in? Because we need to, like, figure that out as soon as possible. Because if not, like, that's going to cause a lot of issues later on down the road. Like, you don't want to be grown up and having that type of situation going on. All right? So that's my interpretation of that. So anytime, and the thing is, we can't know how that person feels because we are not that person. So if they say, this is how I feel, who are we to then go and hate and judge and tell that person, oh, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. You were born a certain way. You need to, who are you to tell that person what they need to do? You know what I'm saying? My philosophy is, let everyone live their life how they want to live it, unless they are infringing on other people's right to do the same. All right? It's as simple as that. We were all given free will on purpose. All right? So let's go ahead and watch a few of these videos. Overall, I don't think this belongs in the school system to be taught to everybody. I don't think that's right. Someone who doesn't experience any of these issues and doesn't know anyone who is experiencing issues like this, it's just not necessary, in my opinion. However, what I would say is, as far as that needs to go, all right, is acceptance. They should be taught that everyone is unique in their own way, and we should treat everyone with decency, kindness, and respect. That is as far as that needs to go, unless someone comes forward, and says, hey, look, I have some identity issues. I don't know, where I belong. I don't know if I'm this way. I don't know if I'm that way. Then that's a whole different discussion. All right. But as far as teaching this to kindergartners, it's like the other thing, too, that gets me, and this was the main problem I had with it, was toward the bottom. Keep in mind, the video I watched, she was saying they're teaching this to kindergartners. And at the bottom of it, it talks about sexual attraction. In what world does it make sense to say those words to children, talking about sexual attraction? You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want that. It's ridiculous. It is absurd to not only go to the point of talking about, I don't know, let's just go ahead and watch these few videos right here, y'all. Let's see So the first one we got, gender unicorn causes controversy at California middle school.
A lot of parents and a lot of grandparents, and I know a lot of them have called the school and complained about it.
The controversy at 𝕒𝕜 Middle School surrounds this graphic called the Gender Unicorn. The graphic, which can be found on the website for Trans Student Educational Resources, is meant to educate people about gender identity. It was distributed by a science teacher to roughly 50 students this week on the first day of...
Okay, it says emotionally attracted to. I thought it said sexual attraction, but it's still the same thing. All right, it's still talking about attraction. I don't think that's, anywhere near appropriate to talk to children about. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's so far beyond the norm, in my opinion.
School
was not an assignment. Kids were not asked to fill it out. He really was using it as a reference point.
Terry Metzger is the superintendent for the 𝕒𝕜 Unified School District. Metzger says the 7th and 8th grade science teacher handed out copies of the infographic to help explain why he doesn't use the pronoun Mr., instead using 𝕒𝕜, pronounced mixed, a title which does not imply a gender. Metzger says the school's principal happened to be in the class at the time and told the teacher to stop handing out copies of the gender unicorn.
Was probably not appropriate, just in the way that the handout looked, and it looked like it needed to be filled out, and so it was just probably the wrong tool.
It is a touchy subject, and of course it's going to be when it comes to youth.
Catalina Zambrano is the gender spectrum coordinator for the Central Valley Pride Center. Zambrano says she uses the gender unicorn graph for educational purposes for her job, adding that while she says the point is not to pry at someone's sexuality, she does feel that a breakdown in communication is the real culprit in the case at 𝕒𝕜 Middle School.
There's going to be a lot of people who are not going to get it. We understand that. We respect that. But, maybe a little bit more planning next time, a little bit more finesse.
So, the teacher is showing it to the students to explain his pronouns. Again, like, why do you need to, you don't owe them an explanation, right? You just tell them what, the way you want to be addressed, and that's it, right? Like, the rest of it, to me, that's your personal business. That's just the way I see it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just skipping forward to the part where they're going to talk about this gender unicorn thing, all right? And so I just heard them talking about a science teacher. That's a little odd to me. I'm going to tell you why. I just pulled up some videos at random, okay? I just did a quick search on YouTube, all right, and I pulled up a few videos. So how is it that there is apparently such a coincidence that I just happened to pull up two, videos talking about this, and they both mention a science teacher? If this is the same science teacher, which I'm assuming it probably is, because or else that would be quite the coincidence, because another science teacher is handing this out. I don't know yet, but I'm assuming we're going to find out here in just a second. That tends to make me believe that this isn't a wide-scale thing. And they even said in the video that the principal told the teacher to stop handing these out. All right? So this is making me think that there may be a few instances of teachers using this, and it's not as wide-scale, and not a, typical, like it's not in the learning plan, as it was described in the video that I watched. Like this, the video that I watched made me think that, this is everywhere. Pretty much all the teachers, even kindergarten teachers, are handing these out and trying to explain gender theory to them. Like they have any clue what you're talking about. So already, this is starting to give me some doubts about the credibility of that first video that I watched. All right.
Some students and parents found it hard to concentrate based on this story. So there's a teacher in California who handed out a worksheet, a little guide showing a little diagram, if you will. I think we have a picture of it to show you here. This shows gender identity. It's a graphic to explain preferred title. This is coming from a science teacher in California who goes by mix, not Mr., but 𝕒𝕜 as a way.
That's the same teacher, y'all. It's the same freaking teacher. I wonder if every video we're going to see is going to talk about the same story. If that's the case, it's going to continue down the path that this isn't, you know what I'm saying? It's not everywhere. This is maybe a few instances of a few teachers who thinks this information is important, and I need to show it to everybody. All right? I don't know.
To say, this is how I identify my gender. And so a lot of parents really were not feeling this idea, especially because it came from a science teacher. They do say in California, they do teach gender identity in health courses, but not a science course. So I posted this earlier today, got some feedback from some parents. Let's check out this comment here that came in from...
It's in middle school, though. In health courses? I don't know. In health courses, now you're starting to establish some credibility to the reason why this is being brought. All right, you are starting to get to the point. If it is in health class, all right, it's still sketchy. I will admit that it is still, but at the end of the day, at least it isn't in talking, in kindergarten. All right, that's the big thing. That's where it definitely shouldn't be, because now that is really pushing the boundaries into indoctrination. All right, so that's what this other YouTuber was talking about. That this gender unicorn is indoctrination. All right, because it's presented in such a way that there's no ability for anyone to contest any of the information. So like you have to just accept it as fact, or you get in trouble. Like that was the the way that everything was being presented. There's no middle ground. There's no anything, and that's where I was like, well, how do we know that every single person who's presenting this is presenting it as this is complete fact and you can't dispute or have a conversation about it? You know what I'm saying? So that was my philosophy.
Erica, she says, I prefer to introduce such topics to my own child, so I can be the greater influence as opposed to a stranger who doesn't hold the same beliefs we do. I will allow my children to speak openly, of course, and ask questions, but I can answer through a loving and Christian filter. I can better prepare for his questions if I'm the one initiating the discussion. So, ladies.
I've never heard of that before, but...
So this is a very difficult topic, all right? And the reason being is because there are so many dynamics that goes into it for one person to be able to say, I know exactly what the right answer is, and here's what we need to do. But if it's only in health class, and if it's only to teenagers, and if the only conversation is that this is how some people may feel, some people may not know for sure where they fit on this chart. So they may, be born one way, they may feel a different way, all right? If that's the conversation, if we're talking about, if this is in health class, I guess the only issue, if it's only in health class, and if it's only brought up to say that some people may have, difficulties with this area, the only question I have is it necessary for teenagers to learn about issues that someone else might be going through? So I don't know. I don't know.
It's interesting that he handed out that worksheet.
Yeah.
And wonder if the school knew that he was handing it out beforehand, or
They
if
did not.
So that's an interesting
Yeah,
question.
about 50 students got it before the principal put the kibosh on it.
It's interesting because this is a teacher, my understanding, not trying to teach about gender identity, but trying to explain why he chooses to go by this title.
Yeah, and some people who supported it said it showed the students empathy. If someone is identifying as this is how you respect them, and this is how you refer to them in return. So a lot of people saw both sides of this one, but you could see how those parents were like, hold up, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Interesting that the principal stopped it too. So now what's the next step going forward?
It's gone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the worksheet is out of there for now. So I'll keep following up. This was from USA Today, so we're going to be sure to follow up and see if they do something on that and see, you know, what really happens there in California.
I think each person has the right to say, here's what my pronouns are. You address me as Mr. or Miss or whatever else. All right. I don't see the whole argument of, well, you can't tell other people how to address you. I think you can. If we go and look at the military, for example, all right, you can't go to a sergeant and call him out of name. You have to call him according to his rank, all right? So I do think that, everyone reserves that right. However, I will say, if someone isn't familiar with you, they have no idea, if they're going only by looks, I don't think you can really get mad and, call them names or do whatever else because they called you the wrong thing. Well, guess what? They don't know. They're used to everyone looking a certain way. If you look this way, I'm going to call you sir. If you look this way, I'm going to call you male. It's the same thing. If a woman has a really deep voice and she's talking on a phone, someone calls her sir, she gets all pissed about it. Oh, I'm a male. You shouldn't call, you don't know. And he's like, well, what was I supposed to do? I called you, from the sound that I'm used to hearing coming from guys. All right. However, once that person is aware, then they should call them accordingly. So that's what I think. So that's as far as I think that should go. You know what I'm saying? Then they should just say it's male. Okay, my apologies, male. You know what I'm saying? That's it. That's as far as that should go. But if they continue, and if they say, oh, you sound a certain way, so I'm going to call you by the way you sound, at that point, now you're being rude. At that point, now, you're not being respectful. And I think that is wrong. All right.
The Gender Unicorn is a graphic produced by Trans Student Educational Resources, an organization focused on supporting the well-being of trans students across the globe. The Gender Unicorn provides us with visual representation of the range of 𝕥𝕤 experiences that are common among most people. 𝕥𝕤 stands for sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression.
Well, I'm glad they explained it because I've never heard of that before. I've never heard of this gender unicorn thing either until recently. All right. So let's see. Sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression. Okay.
The Gender Unicorn helps users capture the difference between gender identity, who we know ourselves to be, gender expression, how we express our gender, biological sex, genitals, chromosomes, and hormones, physical attraction, and romantic attraction. Everyone has a Soji, and everyone's Soji is unique to them. The Gender Unicorn is a fun and informative way to think through these concepts and how they apply to ourselves and our communities. For more information, go to seattleschools.org/health education.
So I've just wrote down the website. All right. So we are going to be looking at that. We got one more video to do, y'all.
They indicate quite clearly that you're to regard biological sex, gender identity, gender expression, and sexual proclivity as varying independently, which of course they don't. By any stretch of the imagination, they're so tightly correlated that, well, you can't use correlation to imply cause or to infer causality, but Jesus, when the correlations are above 0.95, you have to start wondering if there's actually not some causal link. And it's absurd to me that we really even have to have that discussion. But the notion, and this is being taught to school kids, this is mainstream doctrine, Joe. I mean, look up the gender unicorn. That's a fun thing to look up. I mean,
what is the gender unicorn?
The gender unicorn is this little happy symbol that's being marketed to children.
Now, hopefully it just started in the middle of a conversation, because this dude right here, he just rattled off a whole bunch of stuff that's like, I don't know what the heck he was talking about. You know what I'm saying?
You know, in elementary school, describing to them the fact that biological sex, gender identity, gender expression, and sexual proclivity vary independently. They're going after them very young, and so that's part of the school system now in many places.
So in many ways, it's sort of an indoctrination. They're trying to.
You might say that, yeah.
The gender unicorn.
The gender unicorn, man. Check that thing out.
Gender identity: female, woman, girl, male, man, boy, other genders, gender expression. Feminine, masculine, other. Sex assigned at birth. Female, male, other. Intersex. Ooh, like aliens. Physically attracted to men, women, other. Other gender. S.
Yes.
Emotionally attracted.
So what you do if you're a kid is you put a little marker there on the arrow to show where you're located on all those independent dimensions. And obviously, if you look at the style of the gender unicorn, you can tell what sort of age it's aimed at, because that looks like it's aimed for, certainly not aimed at kids over, I would say, 10.
Yeah, why does the gender unicorn have a double helix DNA symbol where its penis or vagina should be?
That's to indicate that there's no such thing as biology, I presume.
But why? That's how ironic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but I will say, that is based on assumption, all right? We don't know why that is there, all right? We don't know. Now, there was a whole document associated with this graph. So when we're done with this, I'm going to pull up that website, and we're going to briefly read through it, and we'll see what sort of information is there about this graph, all right?
I say so, yeah.
It's a weird place to put it, over the crotch of the unicorn.
Yeah, there's an indefinite number of weird things about that. Yes, there's the genderbred person. That's a
genderbred person has a male symbol, female symbol, and then a what am I, all together with a circle. Is that a hole? It's not a hole. Circle. It's a strange, problematic place for the circle, I would say. Very assumptive.
I would say so, yes, yes.
Oh, I don't like that at all. I feel triggered.
Well,
the whole thing is, it's so bizarre, but what's even more bizarre is the lack of dialogue. I feel like you're in a weird position where there's a tremendous amount of support for you outside of the academic system. People like me, so many people that support your YouTube videos, so many people that read about you online. You're experiencing all this backlash at like McMaster's and these sort of things, but people are not engaging you, and the way they're keeping from engaging you is saying that you are demonstrating hate speech, like that big sign.
Well, there's hate speech, there's racism. The reason I've been called a racist is because I criticized the University of Toronto's decision to use the Toronto chapter of Black Lives Matter as policy advisors. And the reason I did that was because the two women who founded Black Lives Matter in Toronto, let's say they have questionable reputations, and leave it at that. And so apparently that makes me racist because, well,
you're
for
not allowed
obvious
to
reasons.
question them because
Apparently
they're black.
not. Well,
they
yes,
have
I
carte
mean,
blanche.
one of them has publicly stated that, you know, white people are inferior to black people because they don't have enough melanin in their skin, and melanin is the chemical that communicates cosmically so that you're...
So that's based on what? Because maybe a few people told you that. So now you're basically going to say that, oh, the entire group of people who support Black Lives Matter, that's their philosophy? No. It really is getting old, all right? It really is. That every time we're going to pick a topic, right? And we're going to pick it apart and say this is wrong and that's wrong. Why does Black Lives Matter always have to get brought up? Maybe not every single time, but usually. If we're going to pick anything apart, it's like something's going to lead to attention that's going to go, oh yes, Black Lives Matter is horrible, and they're doing this and they're doing that. And it's like, why? I don't know, y'all. It's getting very repetitive, all right? If we were going to start there, then fine. But, like, can we have a debate at all without it going there? Is that even possible anymore?
That was one essential claim. And the other one is embroiled in a lawsuit with the University of Toronto Students' Union for essentially she's been accused of embezzling with a couple cronies about $400,000 from the coffers of the Students' Union. So I felt that perhaps those weren't the best people for the University of Toronto to be associating with when they're formulating their anti-racist policies.
Well, clearly that makes you racist. The way they're keeping from engaging you is saying that you are demonstrating hate speech,
yeah,
like that big sign.
Well, there's hate speech, there's racism. The reason I've been called a racist is because I criticized the University of Toronto's decision to use the Toronto chapter of Black Lives Matter as policy advisors. And the reason I did that was because the two women who founded...
I'm not quite understanding this. Is he saying the women who founded Black Lives Matter, them specifically, were getting put into a position, and he complained that they specifically shouldn't get picked? Is that what he's saying? I'm not for sure. This guy really, to me, isn't speaking very clearly at all. Either that or, you know, or it could be that there was more conversation that was cut out because it started at the, you know, in the middle or something like that. That could be the problem. I don't know.
Black Lives Matter in Toronto. Let's say they have questionable reputations, and leave it at that. And so apparently that makes me racist because, well,
you're
for
not allowed
obvious
to
reasons.
question them because
Apparently
they're black.
not. Well,
they
yes,
have
I
carte
mean,
blanche.
one of them has publicly stated that, you know, white people are inferior to black people because they don't have enough melanin in their skin, and melanin is the chemical that communicates cosmically so that you're spiritually enlightened. That was one essential claim. And the other one is embroiled in a lawsuit with the University of Toronto Students' Union for essentially she's been accused of embezzling with a couple cronies about $400,000 from the coffers of the Students' Union. So I felt that perhaps those weren't the best people for the University of Toronto to be associating with when they're formulating their anti-racist policies.
Well, clearly that makes you racist.
Clearly.
Well, it's
and
fascinating.
transphobic as well.
All together?
Yes.
In one little lump sum?
That's
right there,
me,
just
man.
one thing?
How? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. Like, you know, this is a big problem, I think. Is someone like this, I think, like their whole prerogative is to, anything that they don't agree with, like they're going to bring it up in every single conversation. Say, oh yeah, this is bad, that's bad, and here's why, right? Like, the problem is, all of the points he's trying to make, they're all anecdotal, all right? What that means is, it's based off of his own personal experience, all right? Not based on a whole. The whole conversation has nothing to do with that. This is only from his personal experience. So I think if you're going to pick something apart and say this is bad, then I think you need to understand that topic on a much deeper level than just to say, you know, well, a few people from this camp was rude or nasty to me, and so therefore everyone else who supports that thing they also supported, they're bad. That don't fly. You know what I'm saying? It just don't. So here's the thing. Since they're talking about it, I guess I'll have to bring it up as well, even though that wasn't supposed to be what we were talking about. You know what I'm saying? But since we're here, I may as well go ahead and address it. Like, so here we go. Multiple things can be completely different and stand on their own, but have the same name. So if someone says, I support Black Lives Matter, you can't go and then say, so why do you support all the riots? Why do you support this? Why do you support George Floyd? Why do you support this? Why? You don't know. You really don't. And then sometimes they'll bring up this website where they list off a whole bunch of, apparently, I haven't read it because it's irrelevant. Okay, it's really not. A whole bunch of like racist stuff, like, white people are bad and all this other kind of, and then like they want to use that information to say Black Lives Matter is bad. All right. But I'm going to say there are three different entities. All right. There is the organization, which, just about everything you're going to hear is bad. And I've heard quite a bit of stuff directly from them because I watched videos from them. All right. And there was some pretty sketchy stuff. All right. So that's one thing. So then you have the rioters. Those people, in my opinion, were Black Lives Don't Matter because they weren't actually doing anything to benefit the movement, which is not the organization. The movement was the people who were peacefully protesting, all right, against police brutality. Those are the people I support, and those people were saying Black Lives Matter. Those people I support. The rioters, I do not support whatsoever. You guys, I'm sorry to tell you, if you thought you were helping, you weren't. Because all over TV, all over the web, all over everything, they showed almost nothing but what you guys were doing and saying, look at what Black Lives Matter is doing. Look at what they're all about. And then everyone who possibly would have stood behind you and said, yes, Black Lives Matter, it turned into a political debate. It turned into, oh, these are, extremists. And so every time someone says Black Lives Matter, then they're saying, oh, you're a racist. Oh, you're an extremist. Oh, you're going to burn something down. So the people who are rioting were Black Lives Don't Matter. All right. Very different thing right there. That's my opinion on that.
Yeah. What's really fascinating about that is like you're not saying anything about black people. You're saying about two individuals that you're having very specific things.
Everybody that makes up a group is the same. You see, you have to understand that.
Men and women.
Right. That's right. Except men and women.
Because men and women can be anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's an interesting angle on the transsexual thing too, because these activists, they stand out and claim that they're standing for oppressed communities, right? And first of all, they identify the identity group that they're activating on the part of as a community, and then they imply that it's a homogenous community, and then they state that because they happen to be members of that community by their own admission, let's say, or by their own declaration, that's a better word, that they are now legitimate representatives of that community. And one of the things that's been quite fascinating to me since this has occurred is that I've had a comparatively large number of letters from transgender people, about 35 so far, and every one of those except one was positive. They are not happy about my sampling of the trans community, which isn't, it's not a random sample or anything like that, but 35 letters is a lot when the community of people is actually quite small. And they're not happy at all. They're not happy to be so publicly discussed now, because many of them would just as soon have some privacy, and they're already having trouble fitting.
Again, this is anecdotal. He's basing this opinion from a few letters he had gotten, all right? This does not represent the entire trans community. It doesn't. This is a few people. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if it was 10,000, that still isn't the entire trans community. It's not, all right? So I would like to know what it is exactly that this guy says about the trans community. So I think we're going to end up doing some research on this guy. We're going to see what it was, and then, we'll see if maybe we can figure out why he got those nasty letters, all right? I'm willing to bet it is not because they don't want anyone talking about them. I would say the opposite is more likely to be true, because I think overall what they would want more than anything would be to be accepted. So the best way to accomplish that is better information, all right, for people to understand that, sometimes when people are being created, nature can take its course, all right. It is, there is a lot of different factors that's at play to where really anything can happen, anything. As I said, someone can be born with both male and female parts. So how could you bear that in mind and still say that someone being trans is a myth, that no one is born gay, that no one is born, with having their wires crossed. No one is born this way. No one is born that way. To the person who thinks that, do a quick Google search and type in birth defects and switch it to images. And then after, scroll through that for a good 10 minutes and then keep that in your mind that God doesn't make mistakes. And I guarantee you, you will not be able to keep that sentiment in your mind. Like, you will at that point say, you know what? I think that sentiment is wrong, because it is. It just is. All right. And so look at it this way. If a mother smokes cigarettes and does hard drugs throughout her entire pregnancy, what are the odds her child is going to be born with birth defects? Pretty good, right? Are we going to say, oh, that's God's fault. Are we going to blame it on God and say God made a mistake? No. We're going to say, well, you shouldn't have done all those things. If you should have, taken better care of yourself and made better decisions for the welfare of your child. We're not going to sit there and say, man, God, look at the mistake you made here. How could you do this? It's nature. Sometimes, and even if the mother does everything she's supposed to do and doesn't do any of that stuff, you can still have birth defects because of your genes. Because of, you can inherit different genes, and even if there's no illnesses or diseases that runs in the family, you can still get birth defects. You can still, and that's what I was saying before, like, the possibilities for things that can go wrong during a pregnancy is unlimited, all right? Anything can go wrong. It is nature. So I don't think we should be, having that discussion of, oh, well, it's just a myth. No one is born that way. That's ridiculous to me. So that's what I'm saying, though, all right? I can see there possibly being certain situations to where graphs like this might be used, all right? But to be taught to everybody, I don't think that's, the right way to go. As I was saying in my other video, especially for little kids, the furthest they should be taught is that everybody is unique and different, and we should treat them with kindness and respect, all right? Just because we may view them as being different or being odd, or, he looks a certain way, but he dresses in a way that, doesn't really, everybody else is, doing this or that, and this one kid over here is weird and awkward, so that's what I was saying. That's as far as it should go on a wide-scale basis, especially for kindergarten or something like that. Basic etiquette is as far as that should go. However, like I said, if someone had, some issues and had brought it up, then that's where I could see possibly a conversation like that occurring, but only with a professional and possibly only through permission of the parent. I don't think, the school should take the role of a parent completely and not even include the parent at all. I don't think that would be right either. Because at the end of the day, the teachers, the staff, they're not parents. They're not there to, say, well, you're our children now, right? Like, you don't have ownership of these children. You're not raising them. The only thing you're there to do is to educate them about how the world works. That's it.
As legitimate representatives, they don't believe, they're not homogenous in their political viewpoints, and they're not necessarily fans of the people who are playing gender bender games, because many of the transsexuals who are, let's say, serious about it, for lack of a better way of describing it, aren't happy that this has become a kind of a fad, essentially, and that they're being used by the politically correct types to further their political agenda. So that's quite cool too, because it isn't obvious to me at all that the attitude that I have towards the situation is actually different in any genuine sense than the attitude that at least a substantial minority of the transsexual people themselves have. And there's plenty of them on YouTube who are complaining about the social justice appropriation of their movement identity. Yeah, well, I don't even know if they have a movement. They're not a community, right? I mean, they're not a community. I mean, a community is in continual contact with one another. They have something that directs their actions in common. I mean, but on the
that is semantics. You know what I'm saying? It really is. I've even just said it, the trans community, all right? But he wants to say, oh, they're not a community because they're not in direct communication with each other. No, they are still a community. In that context, it basically just means in a camp. They are all in that camp. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I'm starting to see why he's been targeted, right? I'm already starting to see it. So it looks to me, I'm not for sure about this, but it looks to me like he's going to take the position to try and debase and devalue everyone who is in that community. All right. Only time will tell, but I'm thinking that's what we're going to find out. I think he's going to be in that camp that says no one is born gay, no one is born in that way, no one is born that way. So you're just making it up to get attention. You're just doing this and that and this and that. That's what I think his problem is. And what I would say for anyone who is trying to have these discussions and people are coming at you and saying, hey, look, you're completely wrong and everything else, go and find, talk to those people who are coming at you and ask them, are you in this community? All right, because if you are, then your input is valuable to me, and going forward I can then use that information to put forth more informed information. I can put forth better information so that I can speak for more people in the trans community. All right, that's what it's all about. Lean not on your own understanding. And I think that's what this guy's problem is. I think he has probably read too many articles, watched too many videos of some random guy sitting in front of a screen who's going to just sit there and talk about a whole bunch of stuff that really doesn't mean anything. All right, that's what I think.
On a postmodern end of the spectrum, if you have some identifiable group feature, then that means you're one of that group, and that everything that you do indicates only that. I mean, there are believers in race and gender and sex they believe in the reality of those categories far more than anybody on the right, as far as I can tell. So it's very peculiar and unnerving. And widespread and powerful and all of those things.
All right, guys. So here's the final part of the video. All right. So now we're going to see the source of where this graph came from. All right. So it says trans student educational resources. So here's the gender unicorn that we've been hearing so much about. All right. Definitions. Gender identity. This is where it should get really interesting. All right. One's internal sense of being male, female, neither or either of these, both, or another genders. Everyone has gender identity, including you. For transgender people, their sex assigned at birth and their own internal sense of gender identity are not the same. Female, women and girl and male, man and boy, are also not necessarily linked to each other, but are just 6 common gender identities. Not really, because female, woman, and girl, they're all female, all right? So those are not, 3 different identities. At least that's my opinion, all right? Gender expression. The physical manifestation of one's gender identity through clothing, hairstyle, voice, body shape, etc. Many transgender people seek to make their gender expression, how they look, match their gender identity, who they are, rather than their sex assigned at birth. Sex assigned at birth, the assignment and classification of people as male, female, intersex, or another sex based on a combination of anatomy, hormones, chromosomes. It is important we don't simply use sex because of the vagueness of the definition of sex and its place in transphobia. It is important we don't simply use sex because of the vagueness of the definition of sex and its place in transphobia. So transsexual, apparently according to this, is transphobic. That one is new to me, And the other thing that's new to me that I don't quite comprehend and I don't understand is the idea that there are more than 2 genders, male and female. My understanding is that everyone is either male or female, or they could be transgender, right? Which means their mentality and their anatomy do not match, all right? So that is my understanding. I don't, there is an artist that I like, 𝕒𝕤𝕤. Now, I believe 𝕒𝕤𝕤 says that she is gender fluid. Now, I can't really comprehend that. To me, it just doesn't make sense. However, what I will say, though, is that, I am not 𝕒𝕤𝕤. I am not, living life through her experience, all right? So therefore, how can I, watch 𝕒𝕤𝕤's videos and say, well, you're just confused. Well, you're just this or you're just that. How can I do that? The simple answer to that is I can't. You know what I'm saying? I just can't simply do that. That's not fair to her, all right? Prenatal, I can't pronounce that at all. I ain't even going to try. Although not as often as genitalia. Chromosomes do not always determine genitalia, sex, or gender. Physically attracted to sexual orientation. It is important to note that sexual and romantic emotional attraction can be from a variety of factors, including but not limited to gender, gender expression, presentation, and sex assigned at birth. Emotionally attracted to romantic emotional orientation. It is important to note that sexual and romantic emotional attraction emotional attraction can be from a variety of factors, including but not limited to gender identity, gender expression, presentation, and sex assigned at birth. There are other types of attraction related to gender, such as aesthetical or platonic. These are simply 2 common forms of attraction. Quite a bit of this is using terms that I'm not familiar with, all right? So I can't really break that down too much, but let's keep going. Okay, so this part, I think, is going to be the most important, all right, for the discussion that we're having right now, all right? Usage. The gender unicorn uses a Creative Commons license. This means you can share the infographic with credit, even for commercial purposes. You do not have to request permission to use it. Recommended citation. Trans student education resources. The gender unicorn. Many people were curious if agender and asexual people were included in this graphic. In short, they are. For example, identifying on the left of the sexuality spectrum. I would have thought that should have said spectrum, but I don't know. Would indicate no attraction. Each arrow is a sliding scale, not a checkbox. Okay? Changes from the genderbread person. So we just heard about that from that Joe Rogan video. You may recognize this graphic as similar to the genderbread person. Is this supposed to be all one word? Surely not. I'm starting to think they've got some typos in here, y'all. For real. It's pronounced 𝕒𝕓𝕠𝕦𝕥. We created this graphic with significant changes to more accurately portray the distinction between gender, sex assigned at birth, and sexuality. Ultimately, we wanted to recognize gender outside of the Western gender binary, which the genderbread person does not. Not all trans people exist on a scale of womanhood and manhood. There are several other issues with this graphic, such as the use of inaccurate term, biological sex, the use of asex, which fails to recognize that everyone has a sex characteristic prescribed to them, and several other issues with terminology and presentation. Queer and trans organizers have been making the distinction between gender identity, gender presentation, expression, sex, and attraction for decades. No one person or organization has created the concept. However, similar gender mapping concepts to the unicorn seem to have originated on social media sites like Tumblr, okay? Well, we didn't really get to really the most important criteria, which is what this is intended for, all right? We didn't really get there. Let's click this link right here and see where that takes us. Takes us right back where we were just now, so that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, why would you link the page that you're already on? You know what I'm saying? So, in closing, what I will say, the chart does look, you know, like it is intended for children. It really does. So, I will give them that. There is, you know, some red flags going up that this could be used for indoctrination. There is also the stories about schools taking children to strip clubs and gay bars and, you know, having them give dollar bills to strippers. I mean, like, the videos are out there. So when it comes to that, I'm going to say that is stealing their youth, all right? Children should not be learning about problems like this unless they themselves are having an issue that needs to be addressed as soon as possible. If they have an urgent identity crisis at that point, you know, it's not a matter of, you know, anything else. That's something you have to take care of. But to take children to, you know, to strip clubs and, I mean, you know, it's like I was saying, y'all. When you're doing that, you're stealing their innocence. All right. And what I want to know, how is it that parents are signing waivers? You know, because you have to get permission slips from your parents. Your parents have to actually sign it before you can take their kids on a field trip, and they have to know where they're going. So either the parents are being lied to about where they're going, which that is unrealistic because there were people recording it. It could be that the whole thing was staged. That is a possibility. And I'm going to explain why I say that. And a lot of people are going to hear that and they're going to go, oh, that's ridiculous. There's no way they would stage all that for what purpose? All right. So I'm going to bring up something I talked about a little bit ago as an analogy. The people who were rioting for Black Lives Don't Matter because they were hurting the cause. They were ruining the reputation of the movement itself. They were giving it a bad name. All right. So whenever someone might want to cause transphobia or anything similar to that, all right, whether it's homophobia or anything similar to that, this is a good way to do it. To bring this up and say they're teaching this in the schools, they're taking them to strip clubs, they're doing this, and then they create fake videos. I'm not saying they are, but I'm just saying they could be all staged. They could be completely bogus. The reason why I say that is because it is unrealistic that so many parents would sign waivers to have their children be exposed to strip clubs. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just, it's so far-fetched that parents would be like, oh yeah, that's great, let them go and see a stripper. All right. I don't know. It seems so far-fetched that I'm really thinking it could be all fake. It really could. Just like with this, we could have a situation where one teacher used this thing to explain his identification. All right. And then everyone started saying, oh, they're teaching this in all the schools. And then they blow everything out of proportion in order to make, you know, I think they could be doing this to make the trans community look bad. All right. To start their propaganda. All right, and their indoctrination. It could be indoctrination too, because there's not a whole lot of people doubting those videos of those kids going to strip clubs. There's not a whole lot of people watching those and going, is this really real? Like, did this really happen? Is this really happening? All right, you see what I'm saying now? So, I don't know. I think ultimately, when we see information like that, we should question it, especially if it seems so far out of bounds with reality. All right. So, I mean, we know parents more than likely would not sign a waiver like that. So the idea that it's on a wide-scale basis, that it's just going on all over the place, seems a little far-fetched. Because if the school is lying to the parents about where their kids are going, but yet they still allow it to be recorded, it seems fishy. It really does. You know what I'm saying? They wouldn't want video evidence for someone who knows the child or the parents to watch it and go, hey, look at where your son was at. He was at a strip club giving dollar bills to a stripper. Are you aware of this? You see what I'm saying now? So it's like, it seems bogus. And one goal one might have of pushing propaganda like that, if it is propaganda, I don't know if it is a lie or not, I'm not for sure, but if it is, someone could be trying to push that in order to say this whole thing is bad. and and then starts spinning the narrative that we need to ban, we need to, all this kind of stuff. We need to just outright ban everything to do with trans, everything to do with this and with that. Just ban it all because it's all bad. It all leads to our kids going to strip clubs and gay bars and this, and they're trying to push all the kids to be gay. They're trying to force kids to get sex operations. It's all out there. There's plenty of people who are saying that specific thing, that they are literally trying to get normal children to get sex changes. They're trying to force them to wear dresses. If they're a boy, they're trying to get them to wear dresses, and they're trying to make them into being transgender. It's bizarre. I mean, it really is. So, in closing, anytime we hear stories like this, even if there's a video, I would say we should think about it in a critical manner, because we don't know what was going on behind the scenes. We don't know if the whole thing was staged, if it was all fake, or if it actually happened just the way they said it did. Anyone can put anything on the internet and have people believe it. You know what I'm saying? So we definitely shouldn't be believing everything we see. Even if it's a video and it looks legitimate, question everything. That's my philosophy. That's the way I see it. And that could help us avoid situations like this, to where I'm thinking we have a scenario to where something looks a certain way, and then a lot of people said, well, if it looks bad, then that means it is bad, and so let's ban it. Let's go ahead and say this is a widespread thing. It's everywhere. It all needs to just go away because this is what it leads to. See what I'm saying? So that's what I think. I think that's what is going on here. I definitely could be wrong. I'm open to, to other opinions. I'm open to criticisms. If I say anything that's wrong, let me know. All right. I do not know everything. I am not an expert. All right. I will see y'all in the next video. Till then, I'm out.